SaaS Founder show. Welcome, their first new show in the new year. I think we had a great group of founders in 2020. I'm excited for 2021, I think, like everybody here. Andy, how you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. I'm excited. It is a new year, 2021. We all got out of 2020. And yeah, like you said, for this SaaS Founders show, man, we've got a ton of awesome people lined up for the next couple weeks. And today it's exciting to launch a new year of SaaS Founder interviews.
Yeah, for sure. So with that, we have Jeroen Corthout. He's the co-founder of Salesflare. I'm super excited to have him. So with that, I'll bring him on. So Jeroen, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Awesome, really good. And you know, I'm super excited to have you on because you are one of the founders that, you know, I recognize Salesflare. Yeah, it's a familiar brand to me. So
cool.
You know, when we booked you, I was excited about it, and we're happy you're here. I'm just going to kick it off with asking, first of all, before we dive into your story, knowing 6 languages, how does that help you as a founder of a SaaS company?
Not terribly much, I would say, for now, in the sense that we do everything in English. It's a good thing in life, but so far for Salesforce, it hasn't helped me much. So I come from Belgium, where this is not too abnormal. Like we speak Dutch and French as 2 official languages. And I'm Dutch speaking, but I grew up partly in the French speaking part of Belgium. So that came naturally. I speak more English than Dutch because my wife is Brazilian, and internally we speak English at work. So my whole day is speaking English, except when it's family or friends or something.
Yeah, that's interesting.
And then on top of that, my wife is Brazilian, right? So I'm studying Portuguese. I speak German as well. Actually, I had a German girlfriend also at some point. I studied in Italy for a bit, so that's Italian. I'm at 6 now. I also studied Spanish, but it's really, really crappy. And at school, I also had Old Greek and Latin, but that's even less useful than all the other things.
Well, I'm just trying to get by in English. So
yeah,
Right.
You're good at English. It's good.
How about programming languages? Do you have a tech background or?
No, not. I mean, I'm an engineer. But an electrotechnical engineer, and I specialized in the biomedical side of this. I did do some programming, but I'm really not super strong or something. Some HTML and CSS, the usual, and I can do a bit of JavaScript, but quite crappy. And I did a Python course at some point, and I'm probably best at SQL nowadays. Writing SQL queries, but
yeah, it's great. So maybe you can open up and tell us a little bit about Salesflare and what the product is and what you do.
Yeah, so I'm co-founder and CEO of Salesflare. Salesflare is a SaaS company, obviously. What we do is we help other SaaS companies to a certain extent, but also salespeople and founders at agencies. That's like marketing agencies, but also software development agencies. We help them with organizing their sales in a better way to really keep track of their customers well. And we do that without burdening them with a lot of data input. So we built a CRM that people actually keep using. They don't fail at some point because their discipline fails at filling out the CRM, and then the CRM becomes useless and all that. We've started Salesflare now almost 7 years ago with the mission of changing that, to change that. There's so many CRMs out there that salespeople just hate, that they don't get any return from, that they have to spend an enormous amount of time filling them out, that don't seem to be really built for the end user, but more for management. That's actually one of the first slides I made, like a science CRM, like you have from Salesforce, like software with the thing through it. We made with CRM, and then we said CRM is for management, not for salespeople. but it's all very much based on making it super, how can I say, lightweight. As a salesperson, the software is just there to help you. It's not to burden you with a lot of work and stuff. It helps you sell. It creates overview. It keeps track of everything for you. And we have now a bit over 2,000 companies using the software actively.
Very cool. I was going to ask, I love in your LinkedIn profile, you have making CRM human. That's like so great. I mean, I think for many, many SaaS businesses, that's their goal, is to have something that it's user friendly, it makes sense, it's intuitive, it's something that you want to keep coming back to. And I'm familiar with a number of different CRMs, and to your point, the users typically hate them. Like, it doesn't matter what they're on, they typically don't like them and they're cumbersome. So what gave you the idea to create Salesflare? What did you identify? Because that is a crowded space at the same time. There's a lot of big players, there's a lot of small ones. Why did you decide to launch, and it's such an ambitious product?
I know, yeah. It's actually, yeah. It started from, first of all, a big frustration we had. I had been using Salesforce for quite a while, which is like the big gorilla out there. It's 20% of the market. And I was very, very frustrated with it. And it's not very difficult to be very frustrated with Salesforce. So I'm sure a lot of people recognize that. It's very much like what I just said. It's made for management, not really for salespeople. It's not really made for the end user. It's really great for an organization, but not for the people in the organization using it. It doesn't really help you much when you're on the sales front. And I actually had to use it for 4 years in a marketing consultancy, and we also deployed it at big pharma customers of ours. And so I knew that was not going to help when we had another SaaS company. We were in the business intelligence software space, and we had a lot of leads we had to follow up, and we wanted to organize that. And I looked a bit at the stuff out there in the market, and I did find much better things than Salesforce, thank God, like much more focused on helping you sell and all that. But what we always found is that we didn't manage to keep that system alive. Like at some point we would fail at filling out some stuff here and some stuff there, or we forgot this, or it wasn't updated at some point. And then, the data in the system became unreliable, and that made that the system stop being useful. And that's it's the start of a downward spiral where at some point you just stop using the CRM at all. And at some point we had this epiphany where we saw that actually everything that we were inputting was already available somewhere else, like data-wise. Like we were sending an email in one system, like our mailbox, and then going in the CRM and saying, "Oh, I sent this guy an email, follow up next time." Then we would have a meeting with them, and then afterwards log that, or we would call them and then put that in, or we would meet a new person at a company and would have to say, "Okay, we met this new person. This is their phone number from their email signature. This is their address. This is their." Or we would find some info in a company database, put that in the CRM, or we would have the separate email tracking thing, and it was not connected at all. So we figured like all of these things are digital. Many of those have an API. Well, the email tracking we built ourselves, of course, and web tracking linked to that. And if we just pull all that data together and build a system that organizes that for you as a salesperson, then that just makes things so much easier, because then you don't have to rely on your own discipline. And actually all that data input is something that a computer is much better at than you are. So we had that very theoretical idea at some point, and we started thinking like, how can we make this happen? Initially, we thought we were going to build a sales platform, like something that you could connect to a CRM. We saw the issue mostly in bigger companies where they bought something like Salesforce and it doesn't work for them, and they don't want to get out Salesforce. But so we thought like people have support platforms? Why don't they have a sales platform? Why don't they need to be in the CRM? We tried to sell that to bigger companies, but they had two issues with that. First, they wanted to fix Salesforce. They don't want to get another system. And secondly, then if they would get another system, they didn't really trust the synchronization part. They trusted with other systems, but all of a sudden with a sales platform, that was a bit crazy for them. And at some point, we were in a startup incubator, and we got more interest from the startup sitting next to us than we got from these large enterprises we were talking to. So we just decided to switch, and we said, well, we're not a sales platform, then we're a sales CRM, and we started selling that, and that's going very well. Now companies that come on Salesflare are getting larger and larger. We still sell to a lot of small companies, but we also have a lot of mid-sized companies coming on the software nowadays.
Now you mentioned an incubator. How did you have co-founders? How did you finance kind of starting out? Were you working at the same time? What was kind of that experience?
Yeah. So yes, I have one co-founder. We were working together on that business intelligence software company. It was there that we had the idea, and Salesflare was much more exciting than what we were working on. We did have some good customers on the other one, but we decided to refocus at some point. The incubator was really great for us. Like we started off in a small office, just the two of us and my dog and his two cats and a turtle and stuff. It was nice, but once we entered that startup incubator, it helped us so much because we could talk to all these other companies that were going through similar things than we were going through, and that we learned so much in these. I think we spent 3 years in an incubator.
Okay.
We also entered 2 accelerators. It's probably a bit of overkill. I wouldn't totally recommend that in retrospect, but we got some money from both of the incubators, which helped us tremendously in the beginning. So that was some of our early money, was 25K from one accelerator, for which in the end we didn't have to give anything in return. 50K from another accelerator. Then we added some here in Europe. You have all sorts of subsidy stuff. So we got 50K in subsidies for a feasibility study. Then we added 100K from the bank, and that's really how we got started, because it took us a while to get Salesflare sold even for the first time. And as you know, in SaaS, you need some sort of investment before you see things rolling in, especially if you're selling SMB. You need to build some volume until your revenues start keeping up with your investments, let's say, and with the amount of people you have hired and stuff. But we did these things. We got some more subsidies. We got some angels on board. We got some more loans, and like that, we were able to fund everything until our revenues were big enough to do that, basically.
What was that like, that period between kind of starting and getting your first couple of customers? Was it hard? How did you stay motivated? What was kind of that time frame where I know things can be pretty difficult for a SaaS founder?
Yeah, I must say it's a while ago, and I can't really imagine it anymore. But it wasn't easy. I remember we would often meet the head of the incubator, for instance, and he would be like, "And how's the sales doing?" And we're like, "Yeah, we've sold it one time." And he'd be like, "Oh." I mean, it was a breakthrough for us when we sold the first time. And
Yeah.
I think we got a bit over 2,000 euros for that, which seemed like big money then, but now in retrospect, it's really nothing. It wasn't always easy. You need some sort of optimism and be slightly naive and don't look too far ahead, and just focus on the next thing. Keep making progress. That's, I think, what keeps you going at that point.
Did having a co-founder help from that standpoint of you guys, if
Definitely.
one person was feeling down, the other person helped?
I wouldn't say that we keep up each other's motivation or as such, but it helps to have a sort of a commitment. I remember I tried to start a company on my own at some point, and it was just very hard to get out of bed when the days were a bit worse. You you just don't feel like starting, and when you have a team, like when you're at least two, we very quickly became like three. You go to a group. I mean, there's a social interaction. You have a commitment to each other. You're working together, so that keeps things going. It's much easier, I think, to keep motivation in that way.
What is or was the dynamic like between you and your co-founder? Like, what roles did you guys play? And even personality-wise, like, who's the risk taker and is the other one a little more conservative? How does that play out?
Very high level, I take care more of business and he more of the technical aspect. And he's more of the risk taker and I'm more the one who tries to keep everything in line. That's the very high level description.
And do you guys have a good relationship? Is it easy to make decisions, or do you have different visions? I often see with co-founders sometimes the vision can be off, and how do you stay aligned?
It's quite okay. I mean, it's not to say that we don't have some hefty discussions sometimes, but I think it's quite healthy. I don't have a lot to complain about.
That's good. What about getting into a competitive market? We talk to a lot of SaaS founders and software folks and even, bleeding edge technology. And some of them are in markets where no one understands it and they're kind of working ahead. Some in the middle, it seems like a CRM and obviously that space. I mean, you're going up against a lot. So how do you, how have you looked at that and faced that? And how do you figure to find your place in the market when it is so competitive?
Yeah. First of all, we from the beginning we did believe that we make things significantly better. So I explained what we focus on. It's really like helping fixing CRM, basically making it something that stays alive, that actually helps, and all that. Now we found that even though you can be, in theory, very well differentiated, it's not super easy to communicate that, and people's patience is so low and people have way less understanding of the market than you, that it's not very easy to sort of win just based on differentiation. Like product differentiation. Like SaaS founders, a part of us, we look a bit further than the general business owner who just wants a CRM and just types CRM into Google and then reads a few lists and says, oh, this one comes back a few times, and then just picks one and says, oh, it's free. Oh, I get that. It's free. Although I see a lot of SaaS founders also not thinking too much about their decision and just going something with free with the big brand name and then regret their decision after 3 months or so. But what we try to do to counteract that is really make sure that people have the best experience possible when they get on our software. We give a lot of importance to onboarding and to building personal relationships with customers, to creating quality content, nothing written by copywriters or something, but real stuff, no rehashed content from another place or something. And if you look at, for instance, our G2 rankings, we rank, I think currently third or fourth easiest to use CRM, but also the #1 most implementable CRM. of all 640 they list.
Wow.
So it's work, and in terms of relationship, I think we're second. So graded the second CRM that has the best relationships with customers. So that's working out for us, especially because our main channels of growth are word of mouth. It's Google and review sites. It's sort of difficult to decouple the two because a lot of Google ends up on review sites. And third are content marketing. It's very, very hard for us to grow based on paid channels. For a simple reason that first there's 640 CRMs, at least. I mean, 640 listed on G2. Some of those have a lot of money, so a lot of VC money, or they're public or whatever. Some of those are so overpriced that their customer lifetime values are way higher than ours. So that makes that these companies can spend much more, and we can never win that battle.
What was like getting those first couple customers? Was that like hitting the pavement and making phone calls? I mean, you talk about like SEO and review sites now are a big driver, but you don't have that when you start. So
no, definitely not. That's a very good point. I actually get a lot of SaaS founders and founders of other types of startups that say, "Oh, your marketing is great. We want to learn how you do that, so we can do something similar and all." And then I'm like, "Okay, that's great. So your product, I've seen it. It's nice. Like, how many times have you sold it already?" And they're like, "Oh, we have one pilot running." I'm like, "Why would you care then about all the stuff we do for marketing? We didn't do that at the time. At the time, I was contacting my network, and very initially we do customer interviews, and at the end of these interviews, I would ask like, which other people should I interview, and then more customer interviews, and then from there we had some of our first contacts. We always thought about PR as some sort of channel that would bring us growth. It actually worked out. Our first customers found us because we got it in local press. It's much easier than the global tech press. That's really, really hard. But I think most of our early customers came from either the networking or the local press. And I would do everything very, how can I say? We didn't have some sort of self-guided onboarding and all that. Everything was me. So from convincing them that Salesflare was great for them to setting them up, like connecting their email address was hard in the beginning. Setting up the software with the right things left and right, showing them how to use it, supporting them afterwards, closing the deal. We did that all sort of manually, which actually was great in the long run as well, because we learned so much from doing that manually. Whereas if we would just have launched a link and say sign up here, and we would have to rely on the little information that came to us through a chat and through some videos of Hotjar, that would have made it much, much more difficult for us to really make that experience great, because now I was there all the time and I could see all the embarrassing moments, write them down, and then make sure they would get solved. Plus, I remember when we switched from the very guided sales process to the self-guided one. Obviously, our amount of trials went way up, but our close rate also fell immensely. And in these early days, you just don't have the amount of trials. So it's better actually to keep those customers, to really do all your best to do, like Paul Graham says, to do things that don't scale, and really like build that process manually and automate it gradually as you go, when you feel ready to let a certain part go, you know.
Yeah, I really love that point of like automate slowly, because you're right. I mean, you just don't know enough, and if you automate too much up front, you're not getting the information you need. And I think, like you said, the close rate is so low, and I think it's worth putting in that manual, like on the ground effort in the beginning to really know your customer, to really know the product, and to make it happen. So I love that point. What you said, so you wore a lot of hats. There was a lot on your plate, like every SaaS founder. What was the first role that you hired? So what was the first thing that you said, I got to stop doing this, or my co-founders got to stop doing this?
The first role we hired was an extra developer, and the second role we hired was an extra developer, and then the third role we hired was a sales guy, I think, which was a very dumb idea. Because I basically let go part of what I was supposed to do as being really close to the customers, going through that whole thing, to someone else. I would not recommend doing that. It only took a bit, but it was expensive and lost us some time. Then the next role was someone in marketing, I think, which at that point, by the time we were there, that was around the point that we started launching online. So the more self-guided sort of process, the beginning of that. So that actually made sense. That was good.
So Jeroen, I think you mentioned onboarding is something that was, a really important piece in how you get your users up to speed.
Mm-hmm.
How did that look when you first started as compared to the onboarding experience today? And what are some suggestions you would have to share with other founders about, really focusing, and what is, how do you make a great onboarding experience?
Yeah, it's about a few things. First of all, you need to make sure that everything is as easy as possible. Like, people don't need to go over a lot of hurdles, right? Like very, like connect this here, boom, and it works. Connect this there, boom, and it works. And then as quickly as possible, you need to show some value. And what we did is we built quite early on, we built this experience that actually shows you how you're going to use Salesflare. And it shows you how to use Salesflare, but it also shows at the same time like what sort of value you're going to get from it. And that works really great for us, because it's clear for people, and they just like have like this aha erlebnis moment, whatever. Then next to that was a quite a breakthrough for us last year. Was when we built this sort of a gamified setup guide in our software. So if you sign up for Salesflare and you go through the whole onboarding experience, at the end there's a guide popping up, and it tells you exactly the steps you can take to set up Salesflare. You click on it, takes you to the right place. You can do it there, and then when you do it, it automatically completes it, and it shows you the next thing. But also it gives you extra days on the trial, and it sends notifications on the whole team, like, hey, Jeroen just did this step and earned your team 4 more days, yay. That makes that people know what to do, which is important. Some of the feedback we got before that was like, okay, it all looks great, but what do I do? And secondly, we noticed in the data that actually people who get set up further are, first of all, more likely to subscribe, but also on the long run, you can actually correlate how well they get set up in the trial, not even after the trial, within the trial period, to their long-term success and their churn. The better they get set up, and the lower the chances that they churn. And yeah, that was quite a big thing. Another thing we tried last year was was making sure that people can see the software without having to actually make an account, like connect your emails. And I think it's live right now that when you go on the software and you click on sign up for a trial or something, try it for free. You get in the software immediately, and then you can see the walkthrough that I was just talking about. And it's only at the end that it says, hey, and now you can connect your emails. We did this because we see that a lot of people nowadays, they're before they even try, and there's quite a hurdle more and more. Like before it was like, oh, you can try the software and then people would go in and start a trial. Now people are trying to avoid starting trials. And there's a lot of people shopping around for CRMs, and we just like to offer them the possibility of just seeing it without connecting their emails first.
That's pretty cool. So
Yeah.
you're going to get a sense of what the experience is like before you even
Yeah.
go through the trial. That's great.
Yeah, I love a lot of what you said there. We're big fans of gamification. I always talk about time to value, like how quickly can you get somebody to value. And then I love what you're doing with just having people jump into the software and then they use it and then register after they've, kind of gotten to a certain point. That's awesome. How did you guys get to that? Like, what's your process of determining features and roadmap? Is that, like a committee? Do you have a process where you're evaluating different things on ranking factors? How do you figure out the features and functionality and making decisions like that on the onboarding?
Yeah. We have different processes for the different types of sort of things we want to do. For more like bugs and small improvements, we have one process. And actually, we had a meeting this morning where we run through all the things. We see everything that got new input from customers. We run through and we reprioritize. We have like different levels, like it goes from instant to urgent to high, medium, low. But for the features, it's a whole other process. Features and onboarding improvements and all that. That goes through a process where we try to calculate what the impact is going to be on our funnel throughout the different steps. We combine that into one number, and then we combine that number also, which is a bit less scientific, but we combine that also with alignment with our vision, where our product wants to go. And then we return that in a score, and that score indicates to us, it's not defining our choice, but it indicates what the best choice is. And then it's that versus the effort we're going to take. And actually in the whole funnel, what we also have as a factor is the amount of support it's going to add or remove. That's also important. And the way we actually select features to go into that process is mainly based on the amount of customer requests we get. So when it reaches a certain threshold, then we say, okay, this is something we need to start scoring.
Yeah, I really like those scoring factors that you have.
Excuse me?
I really like those scoring factors that you have, like alignment to vision, how much support. We usually talk about, impact and then effort, but I really like alignment to vision and amount and impact to support as being ranking factors for those features as well.
Yeah, you can just pick a framework of the internet like RISE or so, like reach, impact, what is it, confidence and effort or something. But we also like to think a bit ourselves, like what do we find important, what have we learned, and then try to like make a model out of that, which might be to some extent close to RISE, but actually different.
That's great. Jeroen, what does your team look like these days? And how has that grown and changed over the years?
We are a team of 7. It's 4 mostly work on product, I mainly work on marketing and some other stuff, like financial stuff and HR and all that. One person on customers and one person on partners.
And are you guys remote?
Right now we are. Usually we are on the same office, but since March last year, we haven't been to the office.
Okay.
Are there any big challenges you've found with people or hiring? That seems to be a common topic that we end up talking about is, finding great people or keeping them, or even dealing with folks that, don't fit the vision of the company.
Right now, we are very blessed with having a consistent team. The person who is the least long with us is 1 year, and the person who's longest with us is already 6 years and 4 months. And all the others are somewhere between that. That's
Wow.
really great. It's a very solid, constant team, good culture. Everybody is really up to speed. But we had issues in the past for sure. One of the issues was like what I said earlier is hiring for a role at the wrong moment, like hiring for a role before you have really nailed the role yourself and you're ready to give it to someone who's better at doing it. That's a mistake we've made. We've made the mistake of hiring the wrong people, mainly on a cultural level, but also sometimes on a competence level. So we put a few extra things in place. It's certainly something we can still improve. But it's like trying to get people on a little project working together, at least involve a few people of the team, not just one person making a decision or so. Do background checks, take these things really seriously, because you might get excited about hiring someone or so. But then if you have to find out afterwards, after a whole process, them coming, that it's really a mistake, try to keep that going until you're like, okay, there's a breaking point here. That's just very, very wasteful.
Right.
Yeah. And stressful.
Yeah, I think that's one of the biggest things that I hear any business owner talk about is just that stress of having a bad team member, and what do you do and how long do you wait, and we talk a lot about the hire slowly, fire quickly, not only around our own business but with all the founders we talk to.
Mm-hmm.
When it comes to people, you said you have some people that have stayed on, so a startup can be stressful. People, sometimes you don't have the funds to pay people the same level. So what have you done to kind of keep folks, motivated, keep them locked in? Like, are there things that you do with culture? Do you purposely try and do that? Are there other things that you do?
To keep the culture, it's mostly about selecting the right people, I think, but it's partly also proactively building towards a certain culture. So if you, for instance, want to have a culture in which everybody speaks up when things are going wrong, then you need to, every time somebody comes with something, you need to respect that. I think it's kind of simple things really that can keep a culture going. When you keep a team stable, it's a bit easier to do that. When you're growing really fast, I think it's a bit harder, and it's really, really important to do the right hiring. We have a lot of things also like stand-up meetings and team meetings and all that to keep our communication up, to make sure that we never under communicate. I don't know what other tips I can give.
Just similarly along those lines, how do you, because it sounds like you've done a good job with the culture and the team just that you've had that stayed with you. How do you articulate the vision that you have for Salesflare so that all the team members get it and they kind of see the big prize behind being a part of that?
We currently have a Google Doc. I think it's about one page and a half. I still need to make a shorter version, which is sort of a vision statement internally. We haven't. I might have to open that up to customers as well at some point. But it's sort of makes a statement of, okay, we find this important. That's why we do it. This is who we do it for, and that's why we do it for them and not for other people. And that's also the document we will grab when we do that vision alignment during the feature process.
Great.
So what, as you've kind of evolved and changed, are there any big mistakes or things that you would do differently, either in the beginning or even recently?
Hiring mistakes were the biggest ones, I think. Waiting too long with providing, let's say, cash guarantees, if you know what I mean, like making sure you have enough cash in the bank can be very stressful. It never went wrong, but now I try to, at least 6 months ahead, I like to have eyes on making sure that we'll never get into issues. What were some other mistakes I made? Yeah, those are the biggest ones, and not like being complacent can also be a mistake. We saw, for instance, in 2019 that we did a lot of stuff, but we didn't really get super forward. And we noticed that where we got most forward was where we defined what we were going to do instead of what we were trying to achieve. And for last year, we then decided to focus more on this kind of things. Like, we define habits. We still define our goals, like numerically, like we want to grow that much and we want to lower our churn that much, and this kind of stuff. But we also define habits, like stuff we were going to do consistently every month to make sure that these things would happen, which makes it just so much easier to keep that rhythm and to then eventually also hit those goals.
That's a really good one. Defining those habits. I love that idea. It's very cool. Back to the motivation part. How do you stay motivated, and how do you motivate your team?
I figured just about a month or two ago, I think, in this whole COVID situation, I'm working from home every day and so many calls, like this huge Zoom fatigue. And at some point I was like, but then I figured just when you think like, I'm going to take every call and every meeting, I'm going to enjoy it to the fullest, have some small talk, don't just run through business, but take a bit of time, try to enjoy it. That makes everything so much more pleasurable, and that makes also that you can keep your motivation up. Talking to customers really helps for me because it keeps the vibe. You see that you're helping so many people. For those who are not in customer roles, like for instance, our developers, they also often see customers because we have this rotating support hero system. But when they're working on features, what really helps for them is to divide the big tasks into smaller chunks, because then you can more easily check off, like, okay, done. Instead of sometimes when you're working on a feature and you don't know where it's going to end and it's so big, that can be really really painful for them to keep their motivation up.
So in looking ahead to the future a little bit, how do you, again, just kind of coming back a little bit to a competitive marketplace, and a lot of markets are competitive, but how do you look at staying innovative and watching what other people are doing and making sure that you're being aware of the market? How do you keep that forward-looking viewpoint right so that you can take the product forward?
Yeah, first of all, we know the market very well. Lots of people talk about, oh, this product does this, that product does that. We try some stuff ourselves. But also on a more systematic level, well, we get a lot of input also from our customers, in the beginning, we had to really drag it out of them, sort of. But nowadays, it just keeps coming, and we need the process. But now, for instance, we're back in a process where we're defining what we're going to do for this year, and it's really a deep thought exercise of where we think the market is going to go, and where we think we can be stronger and more differentiated versus others. And it's a lot of discussions with my co-founder right now.
Yeah. So what's the future of the product? What do you, can you share with us some of the, interesting things that you're looking at doing, a little bit of the roadmap? What's it look like?
Yeah, I cannot really say anything about our current discussions because it's basically in discussion.
Right.
But if you take the long view, so we've always been interested in helping people follow up their customers and connect with them and sell in a much easier way. And that started with automating data because that was actually the main issue in CRMs, that it's just very hard to keep them up to date. But more and more, when there is that data is available, then you can build many things on top of that. And we're looking at all the possibilities to do that, basically, to focus much more on sales automation that we do now. Like last year, we, for instance, launched an automated email sequences feature. Oh, sorry, that's my dog. Can you hear her? Yeah, she stopped. So we launched an automated email sequences feature. So you can trigger emails based on like the fields in the CRM, on when you were last in touch, what it's tagged with, in which stage the opportunity linked to the contact is, and all that. And you can send automated sequences based on that. So like they don't reply, you send another one. They don't click, you send another one. This kind of stuff. We're looking to do much more of that. There's so many opportunities in the sales space to automate more and to make that people can basically sell more and build better relationships with less work.
Very cool.
Given that you're international, for us, but what market are you selling to? Are you selling typically local? Are you selling all over the world? Or do you have a focus area?
We sell 40% in the US, 40% in Europe, and about 20% rest of the world, of which a lot is Australia and the UK and stuff. It's a lot of English-speaking markets because our software is mainly in English. We sell mostly to SaaS companies and agencies. And that's a lot of marketing agencies and software development agencies. And apart from that, it's all B2B companies, and it's all small and medium-sized businesses.
Very cool. Well, Jeroen, do you have anything that you want to share that's kind of a big picture goal for 2021 that you guys have, or maybe even you personally?
Yeah, still in discussion, so I'm afraid I can't share much. If we would have had this interview in a few weeks, I would gladly, but right now I don't think I can really. But it's certainly, I'm looking forward to a year where in 2020 we pushed a lot of change, but it was a bit painful perhaps. Where 2021 we can push some more change, but in a less painful way.
Yeah.
So we have a lot of interviews signed up for 2021, and I think I'm going to ask the same question to everybody at the end. And, so you're going to be the first one. I'm curious, if you were to go back in time to the first 2 months of starting the business and you were sitting and having coffee with yourself, what's kind of the one thing that you would say to yourself about, the future or the business, or what advice would you give yourself?
I'm not going to say anything revolutionary, but I would say focus very much on trying to get that validation. Try to understand what you are building for whom and all that, and start with customer interviews, and then make something very simple, show it to people. We did some of these things well, but I think by the time we did systematic customer interviews, we had the idea in April. I think it was September by the time we started doing that. So that was quite a while.
That's great.
Yeah, it's great.
Super helpful. Well, this has been excellent, Jeroen. We really appreciate you spending this time with us here today. I recommend everyone go to salesflare.com, check it out, especially given that you got some things coming up here with the product. It's going to be, exciting for people to see. So again, thanks a lot, and thanks for everyone for tuning in, and we'll see you again next week.
Thank you.